Good afternoon. It's Pastor Dean Melchior here, and just playing with some different backgrounds for videos. And no, I'm not in front of this Corvette to tell you, as a YouTube influencer, how to have the lifestyles of the rich and famous. This Corvette is my friend's car that I am just doing a few repairs on, and that's a lot of what's taking up my time besides working on messages in the church. Is working around the house, working on cars, whatever's needing fixing, taking advantage of being at home all the time. Hope you are doing well. We are so looking forward to when we can be back together as a church in Franklin Lakes. For anybody that's not part of our church, I'm currently the pastor of Franklin Lakes Baptist Church, Franklin Lakes, New Jersey. The third message in Ephesians will be coming up on Sunday. We'll be covering, I believe it's verses 1 through 10 of chapter 2 of Ephesians. And based on what Paul has established in chapter 1, he's going to build on that and talk about how and expound on what's happened through our salvation, how we've gone from death to life, and what that leads to. I believe in verse 10, he speaks of the purpose of us being saved and made alive, and that's to be performing good works. In separate devotional time and study, I had a parallel in 2 Peter that I just wanted to share with you. I'm going to share 2 Peter chapter 1, verses 3 through 6 with you. And there's some nice parallels to what we're going to get into, I think, as I prepare and give you the message from second chapter of Ephesians. Let me go verse by verse here. 2 Peter chapter 1, verse 3. His divine power has granted to us all things that pertain to life and godliness, through the knowledge of him who called us. Now I'm stopping in the middle of a thought there, but I'm just going to go verse by verse. Actually, let me continue there. Start over at verse 3. His divine power has granted to us all things that pertain to life and godliness, through the knowledge of him who called us to his own glory and excellence. I got thrown off by the footnote there. That's the entirety of verse 3. So we're talking about life, just like we're going to talk about in Ephesians 2. We've been called granted to us all things that pertain to life and godliness, because we are made alive through the knowledge of him, through knowledge of our salvation, the knowledge of God the Father's plan. But he really gets into it in the next few verses here and builds. And I've entitled this short message, Add to Your Faith. I was going to say something like add to your salvation, and that's equally appropriate, but a little bit of a shocking headline sometimes to us. Not add to be a part of our salvation itself, but there's things that we need to do to be a healthy Christian that go beyond our faith, our initial faith, our saving faith. Let me continue in verse 4. By which he has granted to us his precious and very great promises, so that through them you may become partakers of the divine nature, having escaped from the corruption that is in the world because of sinful desire. And that verse 4 talks about becoming partakers of the divine nature, it says. In some fashion, obviously we do not have the attributes of God, but we are more like him as we are sanctified, as we work out our salvation. In other places where Paul describes it that way, that we work out our salvation. The natural, healthy result of our faith is to live it out and become conformed to the image of Christ. And here it's termed again in verse 4, becoming partakers of the divine nature. It also talks about escaping the corruption of this world, the world system. We're in the world, but not of the world, not of what the world goes after. We're going to get into that in Ephesians 2. Let me continue in verse 5. For this very reason, make every effort to supplement your faith with virtue, and virtue with knowledge, and knowledge with self-control, and self-control with steadfastness, and steadfastness with godliness, and godliness with brotherly affection, and brotherly affection with love. It's quite a bit there. I actually ran on, I think, through verse 7 there. It talks again about things that should be the natural consequence of the working out of our salvation. Every effort to supplement your faith, that's in verse 5 that Peter says here. We're in 2 Peter chapter 1. For this reason, make every effort. It takes effort. It's work. But as we live out that love relationship, that's the consequence of us being saved, that position we have, and knowing that we're saved, we're going to, if we're making progress, we're going to be doing that. And it is work. We need to be diligent about it. Peter says, verse 5, for this very reason, make every effort to supplement your faith. Again, I think there's going to be some nice connections to where we go in Ephesians chapter 2. I hope you are doing well. Drop me a line if you'd like. Pastor Dean, no punctuation, at FLBC.org if you'd like to drop me a note. Take care.